It's the 19th of May, 2015, and this is episode 214. This show is intended for informational and educational purposes only. What cryptocurrency enables is new, empowering, and exciting, but we're not experts. Just obsessed companions walking the road towards a more peer-to-peer future. On today's show, we're back at the Texas Bitcoin Conference, courtesy of Rob from the Bitcoin Game. We end episode 214 with the kids, or at least an administrator's perspective on them. Eric Bruntmeyer is a university vice president for financial affairs, and he shares his journey that started with fees and ran headlong into Bitcoin. But first, we join the Bitcoin in Latin America panel, moderated by Chris and Danny of The Crypto Show, available at cryptoshow.com, and featuring a well-represented cast of panelists who all let handle their own introductions. This is a wild and woolly one, lightly edited for that conference feel. Stay tuned during the break for an update on the latest release of the free LTB Companion multi-token wallet and the new click-to-tip integration with letstalkbitcoin.com. Enjoy the show.
Hi, I'm Helena Margarito. I'm from Brazil. I'm a partner at a law office specializing in internet and new technologies. I'm a co-founder of the Brazilian Bitcoin Foundation, and also I have been mentoring some Bitcoin-related startups in Brazil.
Hi, I'm Guillermo Peña from Honduras. I lead the Leutera Foundation. It's a free market think tank in Honduras, and we do public policy oriented, mainly free market, obviously, and we've been trying to open up the door for cryptocurrency technologies.
Hello, my name is Pablo Gonzalez. I'm a founder and CEO of the first Mexican Bitcoin exchange and we're also a Ripple Gateway. So we're trying to develop infrastructure for remittance and cross-border payments over there.
My name is Jose Rodriguez. I'm from Mexico City. I'm a partner at Unicent, which was the first Bitcoin exchange in Argentina. We're also currently now in Mexico. And I'm also part of StartJoin, that is a crowdfunding platform that accepts cryptocurrencies. And I co-founded Peso Digital, which was a proposal we made to the Mexican Central Bank to incorporate blockchain-type technology into the payment systems in Mexico.
Helena, we were talking about the government corruption, how Bitcoin and blockchain would help with government corruption in Brazil.
Yeah, well, actually we have been doing some brainstorm, the four of us, Danny, on what we should bring today to this panel. And we have been hearing in the last panels and the last discussions here, all the uses of the blockchain, how it could help, how it could be a way to make 100% trackable transactions. And this basically relates to a problem that is really common to all of us in Latin America, which is corruption. I'm not so sure how many of you have heard about the Brazilian last scandal on the Petrobras, which is basically the biggest public company in the country. Basically, we have now in Brazil a situation that the corruption is in every level of the government, in every level of publicly traded companies. And it's pretty hard for one to track the money that came from one to another and at which title. Why was that paid for and where is the money? That's pretty hard to find. So basically, blockchain, if used, if the concept was adopted, I know this is kind of utopic or kind of a dream to think about it, but at least for a tiny moment, if we consider to adopt something like the blockchain for the transactions, all the transactions could be trackable. We could always see the origin of the money and who it came from, who it goes to, and this could make a way for corruption to be not at all feasible and not at all practicable in no terms, because you could always see what's the origin of the money. Basically, what a blockchain does to the transactions that are processed in it is to stamp the transaction. So basically, I know, at least on the public key, on the public side of it, who it came from, who it goes to, and all the transactions that happen all the way from the very beginning. Actually, this is my personal opinion. I'm not so sure if governments at all will be interested on doing that because corruptors are there. Let's be honest. This is why they are not interested in politic or tax reforms at all, because they are the ones who are benefited from it. But this could be a great way to bring transparency to countries that urgently need transparency to get bigger, to stop being developing countries and being developed countries.
I'd like to add just a little bit on this. One part of the corruption in Latin America is obviously on the financial transactions, the budgets parts, but there's one part that's I think fewer people look at, including the auditors inside of the country, and that's local registries, land registries, title registries, the different types of titles. I mean, just a really ridiculous example, Honduras for the last 3 years did not put out any license plates. So there was about a quarter of all vehicles going around had no license plates, which makes it for a very complicated process if you're trying to keep any control on just basic traffic. Let's not say the problems that we've seen with a lot of title manipulation. And when you do, the problem with title manipulation with land on land contracts is that once that risk is immediately transferred over to the banks, that risk has to be distributed between all loans, and that is, I would say, one of the bigger reasons why we have 17-18% on home loans, which just gets the economy stuck all over the place. If you were able to solve a couple of these problems, we could definitely go down 4 or 5% just by fixing registries, which is another type of corruption.
One of the Hello? Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, like Elena mentioned, like one of the biggest problems is that the transparency, they're not interested in doing it. And also, once there is an open case of corruption, there is collusion, so there's no prosecution. So they don't go after the people that are inside of this. And who needs the most transparency, for example, Latin America, that is one of the worst problems with corruption, is the same government. And they are the ones who also control the prosecution and also the laws. And that is something that is making Latin America go steps backwards instead of forward. And for example, I have had the unpleasant experience working in stockbrokers and banks of seeing the frauds, how easily 1, 2, or 3 people can get colluded and modify or cancel or alter bank statements or do things that there shouldn't be happening anymore. And blockchain technology could help avoid this.
Yeah, and just to complement, this is something that we have been discussing in the regulatory panel here. The blockchain makes it possible for transactions and other types of contracts, etc., to be trackable and immutable. So basically, nobody can change it, which actually is a great way for people to actually audit. And I think that instead of talking, all we get in Latin America actually is bad press on Bitcoin. So Silk Road, everything that's empty gox, hackers, etc. Instead of focusing on the bad point and the bad press, we should try to, and actually that's one of the missions of the Brazilian Bitcoin Foundation, try to bring to the press how good it could be and how that could help Latin America overall to get a step further.
Okay. Next, we can talk about remittance. I've been a roofer here for 27, almost 28 years, and so I've worked with a lot of people from Mexico and Central America, and, you know, they run into a lot of problems trying to send their money back home, where, you know, they're basically getting raped by Western Union on this end, and then again on the other end to receive it. So, you know, Jose and Pablo, if you can talk about, you guys have exchanges. I mean, how can we set something up where people can send their money back without being taken advantage of.
Yes, as you mentioned, all these services have a big markup and big commissions, and also very inefficient services. Like, I've used it just to know how they work. Sometimes you have to come back 2-3 times to see if they pass through their system. Well, it should be immediate. And you can lose up to 10% of your money just sending money from the States to Mexico and exchanging it for Mexican pesos. And how important is it? Well, in Mexico, it's the second highest income in dollars after oil. So it's a very important, and there's families that depend on this money coming through. So if you can give them a solution through all this technology to have 10% more of their money in their pockets and actually developing a business locally or doing investments or giving money out to their families to develop the economy, this will really help them out to bring all the Latin American and the rest of the world, like Africa, into becoming developed countries.
Yeah, I want to mention a few things, because we've been looking at this for 18 months and gathering data and all that stuff. And remittances through Bitcoin is a very romantic idea. It's this is one of the first applications that's going to disrupt the MTO space, like the money transmission organization space. But it is not yet ready for the big flows. Just to give an example, like the average from the US to Mexico, it's 6 to 8% what they're charging, and globally it's 9.3%. And the flows coming from US to Mexico, they're $24 billion roughly a year, and it's just growing. It was declining, and 2014 it grew again as the US economy started to get back up. But looking at that, if you're saying like there's $24 billion, can you move 5% of the remittance industry, like have it go through Bitcoin? You can't today, because there's not enough infrastructure built yet. There's not enough liquidity. This is coming. We're trying to set up, the start for that to happen. But where it can really help, and it's something that we've looked at, it's the small payments. The other thing, the small payments and the other, like trying to make Bitcoin invisible for a lot of the immigrants, where you're sending money and it's US dollars to pesos, and it's better user experience, it's cheaper, and you don't really know that you're using Bitcoin, and you're working with some of the existing players to enable those cheaper fees. So that's possible now, and I mean, we have a platform right now that's called Saldo, and they're working on our exchange, and they're enabling bill payments, for example, and people paying electricity bills and things like that. And because you're settling real time, like you're buying Bitcoin here, you're selling Bitcoin to Mexico, you're selling it. So you're converting real time USD to MXN per transaction. It's enabling things that were never possible before. So, like he's had a customer that put in $5 and went and paid the electricity bill for his mother, and it was $3.60. So had $1.40 left, and went in and paid, topped up cell phone minutes for his mom as well for $1.40, and it cost him nothing, and the experience was so easy. So that was never possible before, because you do a bill payment and they charge you $3, $4. Most bill payments are $10. Like the average of our remittance is generally like $100 to $200. So they're really small transactions, and they're hard for money laundering. So if we're able to like make Bitcoin indispensable for money transmission businesses, that's a good way to get regulation going, because it can really make really big efficiencies. And it's not only efficiencies, but it's efficiencies that have social impact on people that come and are working really hard to make a living. And
do you have any numbers? You heard a lot of negative stuff about drug money being sent over in dollars. What are the numbers of poor people trying to send small amounts of money to their family? Is there a statistic on that? Do you know?
Most, 200 to 300 million? No, well, no, like the remittances, you're not really getting affected by the drug money. The drug cartels can go and smuggle a truck full of cash through the border. It's not the, and it's US dollars, which they're very fungible in Mexico. So most of the remittances that are going through Western Unions and MoneyGrams and all that, they're going through they're actually being tracked. You know, the most of the money being sent is done through formal markets.
So those are small families.
There's small families and the money laundering
being
opportunities
taken advantage of by Western Union.
Yeah, they're almost nothing. So I mean, right now we have people getting bitcoins, sending them to their families, selling them on Bitso, and they're getting spot rates, or better than spot rates if there's more demand to buy Bitcoin that day. But you cannot get mass adoption when you do it that way. It needs to be one experience for the consumers, and that's why we're encouraging existent players to build up on top of, you know, our platforms and things.
Next question.
Anyone else want to comment on that? Good. Okay. So I'm going to address this to Jose again. Tell us about the penetration in Mexico of Bitcoin, how widely adopted it is, and also tell us about ways that we can further adoption, such as social media, using organizations like ChangeTip to send Bitcoin over social media.
Yes, social media definitely is very important. Most of the communication, for example, that I've seen, and when I found out, for example, when I went to Argentina, that it was one of the most active communities, it was through Facebook. So there wasn't many things going in Mexico over a year ago. He still didn't have his platform. I still didn't have mine. There wasn't any, over a year ago, there wasn't any companies besides local Bitcoins where you could buy and sell Bitcoins. So when I started getting more involved in Bitcoin, that's when I decided, like, hey, I want to go and see what's going on in Argentina and meet all the people that are over there. That's where I met my partners of Unicent and brought over the platform. But in this last year, from not having any platforms, now there are 3 exchanges and one Coinbase-like service. And there are people that are now building, like he mentioned, Saldo MX, and to send Bitcoins and other services on top of Bitcoin to use it as an alternative. And well, you have recently seen some big Bitcoin companies like Bitcoin Reserve adding Mexican peso and the Indian rupee to their options. BTC Jam has also, that is a peer-to-peer lending platform, has also translated to Spanish. Besides, they only had Portuguese and English. Now they translated over to Spanish to get into the Latin American market. And you're seeing all this services bringing out. And also, for example, in the crowdfunding platform that I'm part of, and StartJoin, we also want this market. So I started listing projects and bringing people in, but you also need to have the translation and give it some uses. Like when you can find that you can get a project funded through Bitcoin and people can fund you from all over the world, and you will probably not be getting that money from a bank. For example, if you go to Argentina or even in Mexico, some interest rates are really high compared to developed countries. And even having those rates, like you go to Argentina, you go to Venezuela, even with those high rates, they won't even lend you money. So bringing all those financial options to Bitcoin and helping people develop their businesses and having a better future is what's bringing in. And also, as you mentioned, getting events, and we have done some events in Mexico. We try to at least go once a month to universities and talk and bring people in. And also, we have noticed in the media, like, 2 years ago, no one was speaking about Bitcoin. Right now, at least like every 1-2 weeks, a mainstream newspaper or reporter is contacting us to know what is going on with Bitcoin and how it can help develop. They're not looking anymore like, oh, Silk Road, money laundering, on drugs. They're looking at real financial options for people to develop.
Yeah, just to complement also, in Brazil, in the past 2 months, we have been getting not as much of a bad press, but I guess it was like 2 weeks ago in the biggest magazine of Brazil called Veja. They have addressed, actually it was a one-page saying that even though Bitcoin in the past was related to illegal activities, etc., like half of the way talking about it, Then they said, okay, now JP Morgan is looking that as a financial asset. They are creating a fund to invest on it, etc., etc. So it is funny because now they have realized that there are big people looking into it, and they are trying to figure out why. Because all that they know is the bad press.
Well, just want to add quickly, and something about journalists, they're starting to realize the amazing opportunities that Bitcoin and has to create social impact. Financial inclusion, remittances. There's many different areas where if you look at the possibilities of a country in Latin America. They're greater than first world countries. Like United States, it does need Bitcoin because there's many problems in different areas, but developing countries need Bitcoin more. Like yesterday, listening to Wanda's talk about Africa, for example, some of the challenges. It's true. Like developing countries are the ones that need Bitcoin the most, and I think that there's entities in government and things that are actually working. Some of them, and they're realizing some of these economic benefits that can bring to these countries.
That's just real quick. That's a really good point. Obviously, every country and every person throughout the world could benefit from adopting Bitcoin, but it's kind of I don't know if ironic is the proper term, but basically, as bad as our economy is here in the United States, unfortunately, it's worse elsewhere. And more importantly, as bad as our monetary policy is here, you go to a country like Argentina that I recently visited to see family, and they have 100% inflation per year going on. And so, as terrible as that is, the silver lining is it's driving adoption of things like Bitcoin to overcome those, that loss in purchasing power.
Yeah, and actually Argentina, even though it's a small country, the volume of transacted Bitcoins is 3 times more than the volume of Brazil.
Wow.
Yeah. Even though Brazil has a Facebook community of 12,000 people, the community in Argentina is also pretty big, and they have been adopting that way much more, especially because they have restrictions on sending money abroad, buying US dollars. So, for instance, there was an Argentinian person having lunch with me once in Brazil. She wanted to pay the meal with her credit card. That was not possible. The credit card just refused the transaction because they are not able to spend more, I guess, than $200 US abroad.
Well, there's a time lapse involved in their transaction, which stops them from wanting to take it because by the time the transaction happens, the currency is not worth what it was.
Yeah.
So,
I just realized something. We're talking about a lot of problems in Latin America, and like, this is bad and this is bad. But no, these are amazing opportunities. It's actually really positive.
With Guillermo has one with free trade zones in Honduras.
So a lot of what we're talking here is because of regulation. So monetary controls, exchange controls, banking difficulties, all this stuff. So that's one of the opportunities that we saw that we had open with the free zone legislation. We start looking around who's doing what, who's doing better in the area to attract Bitcoin companies or basically tech innovation. And we saw Panama was taking a lot of that. A lot of people know that. Putting a company in Panama, it's fairly simple, tax friendly. Several companies have resettled or left the States, left a bunch of Canada, left other places to set up shop in Panama, moving all of their people there. And yes, quality of life in Panama City it's not that bad. It's a happy place. You use dollars everywhere. You have a direct connection to like 40 flights a day to any city in the States. But it's the regulation part that really makes them feel comfortable. Otherwise, it wouldn't go. So we said, how about we just first thing we want to do is try to leapfrog Panama with their regulations and make it even simpler with that. How about we use that as our main model, also looking at what Singapore and what Isle of Man are doing and say, they still have to go to Congress. The way the zones are set up, we don't have to go to Congress to do the reform and to put the regulation in. So we want to create the environment that opens up the possibility to maybe allowing a lot of the companies that are in the sphere to forget about that problem and just start developing and deploying their products.
And also, one thing for highly regulated countries, such as the other ones in Latin America, such as Brazil, Argentina, I'm guessing Mexico as well, is that if they realize how the technology works, maybe, I hope, they are able to see that instead of helping people to skip from regulations, using bitcoins or using any other type of cryptocurrencies that have a public ledger could help on tax evasion, actually against tax evasion, money laundering, and many other illegal activities that nowadays, because you can put money in your pocket and just travel away to Switzerland and open a bank account, anonymous bank account there, you're able to do. If it is, of course, not mandatory, but somehow, I don't know, enforced or incentivated that people use those technologies, tracks like that could be much easier, and those could actually help highly regulated governments instead of go against their rules.
Let me just add one for this. So one of the things that we've seen with the Honduran government in particular, but is that you have to, when you're saying do this reform because it helps you, it's always like it's a permanent, you have to sell it in a way that's good for them. I mean, the politicians can only think as far as the next election, and we know that. And you have to feed that. They're not going to think of saving the world, because they know that if they don't deliver the results right now, they won't be there to do it. So back to like the land title thing, is the way I propose it to the government is you guys should look into this, because if you do this, interest rates go down without you having to get in a fight with all the banks. And you're able to open up the door for housing that moves the economy. If you, I mean, I'm not one that proposes that everyone should own a house, but they do. But if they do that, that also helps out companies to take out loans because the loans are lower. So, but they're interested in housing. I'm interested in having companies that stop working for the banks, because you just cannot run a company at 18% loans. And when you don't have a stock market, you don't have a big equity market, then you have one option, or well, there's two options. You can go to the banks, you can go to the loan shark, and which one do you want to do? But it's when we're talking to these regulators, you have to talk to them in the right way. You cannot propose pies in the sky. It has to feel real, and it has to be quick. And the opportunities, when they open up for very short times. So you have to move quick. Once that window's open, you go in full force.
And just to finalize, actually complementing what you said, interest rates in Brazil are the biggest ones in the world. We are talking about 200% a year. I'm not so sure if you realize what it is to have twice as much as you own because you were not able to pay like an electricity bill for some reason. And this is pretty bad. This is actually been struggling, especially the middle class, the one that the government's so proud to say that they have created, they have increased. Everybody's drowning into loans and loans and loans. So this could also benefit the whole economy itself.
Just out of curiosity, when you say 200%, is that like the base rate on government debt, or is that credit cards, or like?
If you have your bank account, if you have a limit on your bank account, so if you spend more than you own, you have a special credit there that it keeps rotating. Like for the whole year, the tax rate, the interest rate on that is 200% a year, or so. It can be more,
right?
Depending on the bank.
Pretty excessive, yeah.
So it looks like we have about 7 minutes. Should we open up? We have one more question, but we could just go ahead and open up to. Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
Do we get a mic on him, or there's a mic there? I see.
There's no mic.
No mic. Thank you. The price is right. Come on down.
Hey, Tony,
Thank
go
you.
ahead and be next. Tone.
Okay, this question is for all the panel. You were talking about the financial aspect of Bitcoin in Latin America, but what about the technical aspects? I mean, software development. It seems that Argentina is one of the countries that have more software development for Bitcoin, but what about the other countries?
Well, there's plenty of talent down there. There's plenty of talent that is completely capable of developing amazing solutions. The problem is not the talent, is that there's, and it's part of the last question, which there's not that much venture capital investment going into, some of the initiatives going into Latin America. There's State of Bitcoin CoinDesk report, and the last one, I was looking at it a few days ago, and I saw the graph where, how much money is coming to different regions, and you see like US and Canada at 64% or something. And the one with the least amount of venture capital funds, it's Latin America. So it's 1% of all the venture capital funds are flowing to Latin America. And it's a problem because, the startup ecosystems behind in our countries where there's no real investors, like playing by the book, like playing by the rules. And it's very abusive. It's still decades away from like what you have in Silicon Valley. So that's one of the issues that's coming from developing new things.
So you see that problem happen all over the place. So one is the lack of options to access capital. When there's few options, you can play the game, which is sad. But what you end up seeing is a lot of good developers being go into competition, go into hackathons for very small prices, or for very small prizes, and the hackathons will be sponsored by a gigantic mobile company, and what they end up doing is, whatever the winner project, they bring him in, and it's a very low pay. I mean, I think it's unfair for a lot of the developers that the way they're just out of the market because there's a lack of access to capital. One of them, again, is the problem with regulation. Investors do not feel confident coming into these areas where they do not trust the legal system. But then you wonder, but why are they going then to Africa why are they going there sometimes to India, where the bureaucratic process is very complicated. But I don't know if it's bad press or if it's just a really big opportunity for people who want to come in. And I think that we could use one or two firms that would come in and set the pace and would really turn things around.
So we have a limited time.
Actually, let's get to the next question real quick. Sorry.
I actually hope there's no IRS agents in the room when I ask this. So is there an optimal country where someone can just buy Bitcoin in America, fly down to a Latin American country, and then sell them there for cash, not looking to make a business, just a nice free trip to Latin America, and come back voluntarily in one piece?
You mean like you did a couple of weeks ago? I did it too. We bought our pesos from Jose.
I think you can. There's great places all around Latin America you could do that. I mean, I don't know. That depends on every country also on their exchanges and how easy it is to get. And hopefully you won't get a horrible price for your Bitcoin. But
we actually did this a few weeks ago. We went down and cashed our Bitcoins in for pesos and had a grand old time at Anarchapulco.
Yeah, like, well, you saw it, like, you can do like local exchanges here in Mexico, no problem, like in cash, not very big amounts. But then again, you go back to countries like Argentina, and you will get a good exchange rate for your Bitcoins, and actually you would get what they call the blue market rate, which is what the government calls a black market. So there's the official rate, which it's has like 50% less of the market value because all the exchange rates are controlled by the government. You go to Argentina with your bitcoins, you're going to get paid well for them. Or you go with your dollars, you're going to get paid for them well. If you need to know people from the communities to do it. Don't do it in the streets.
Do we have time?
So we have time for one more.
One more question.
Yes.
All right. You had mentioned the possibility of remittances and those things and transferring back into the local currency. We also talked about capital controls in places like Argentina, and Venezuela is what comes to mind, where you don't really have the option to go to U.S. dollars. And you also mentioned the fact that Argentina has more Bitcoin transactions. My question is from the viewpoint on the ground where you are, how much of that is actually what we would call the dark web sort of thing, where they're not necessarily buying illegal things, but they're day-to-day necessities? Is there any of that where, as they're trying to get out of their local currency, which is being hyperinflated, where there's any actual person-to-person use of Bitcoin as a day-to-day currency? And if not, what do you think could be done to, instead of transferring to the local currency, to implement Bitcoin more of as an exchange on the ground level?
Most of the people do it for a legitimate business and as an alternative economy for what they have, especially in Argentina and Venezuela. If they keep their money, they only have one certainty. Day by day, it will be more. It will be worth less. So they do it as an alternative for their currency and to avoid all these capital controls that they have in their countries. And if you try to get a look at the exchange rates in Argentina, there's 3 and there's even 4 in Venezuela, and they're all over the place. Like, you cannot get like a stable rate. It goes up and down wildly. So either ways, like in the Bitcoin community, because they're trying to build up, for example, in Argentina, a legitimate businesses and legitimate economy, someone that was doing something illegal would be rejected from the community and left out. So they're trying to escape and to build a better future. So there is no room, like when this is so young and so vulnerable, to let those type of people in.
Also, in Brazil, that I have mentioned personally, we have people that are acting 2 ways. First is buying the position of buy and hold just as an investment. And actually, big people have been doing it. People have invested lots and lots and lots of money on it because they do believe in the protocol. And also, some other people are buying in order to run away from the taxes that we have for international payments. We have a 6.38% plus the difference in the FX rate. So people, when they travel abroad, they just buy Bitcoins and they sell Bitcoins for the local currency. This way they are able to save about 10%. And just to finalize also, Latin Americans are usually well known for being really creative. And this is actually due to Argentina. Many developers there have created, for instance, Mercado Libre, which is a huge platform. Mercado Pago, some other tech companies, and now since they are not able to create any more businesses there because of the bad political situation, they are going elsewhere to develop their businesses, and that also happens with Brazilians. So, for instance, BTC Jam, since they were not able to operate their business model inside of Brazil, they went to Silicon Valley. They got funded abroad, and they're expanding abroad. So, the perspective that we have for VC is that we have a bad regulatory framework that leaves everybody uncertain, but we are also working to have that more cleared for companies to be able to develop from inside those countries and go worldwide.
Awesome. Thank you, Lena. Please give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you guys so much. And check out the Crypto Show with me and Danny.
Today's episode of Let's Talk Bitcoin is brought to you by the LTB Companion multi-token wallet, available at letstalkbitcoin.com/wallet. It's a free Bitcoin wallet that lives as an extension in your Chrome browser, which allows you to hold and use potentially thousands of different types of tokens, each in unique amounts within a single Bitcoin address, whose private key never leaves your local computer. Since the last time I updated you about the companion, community developer Joe Looney has added Click to Tip for use at letstalkbitcoin.com. When you've got the wallet installed in your Chrome browser, load in some BTC, LTB coin, or any other token that you like, and when you're reading an article on the site, look for the little orange LTB tip button below the article but above the comments. Clicking it will launch your LTB companion in a new tab with the content creator's Bitcoin address and the name of the post that you'd like to tip already filled in. Oh, and with Click to Tip, you don't have to worry about sending tokens to a Bitcoin address that doesn't know what they are. If the user you're sending a tip to hasn't indicated that they're using a counterparty compatible wallet, like the LTB companion, you'll only be able to select the tokens they're willing to accept. In the future, users will be able to also indicate what specific counterparty tokens they're willing to accept, and anyone who wants to tip them will find it's difficult, but not impossible, to tip with a token the receiving party doesn't actually want. Oh, and there's a little more. Version 0.4.1 also adds what's called local parsing to the list of useful things that the companion wallet does. When you've sent LTB coin or another counterparty token, usually it needs at least one confirmation before the network can decode and tell you what's up. Now you can skip the wait. When you view yours or anyone else's token transaction on blockchain service chain.so, your wallet will decode the data on the page and show you the details within seconds of your visit. I'd like to offer a hearty round of applause and meaningful appreciation to Joe Looney for continuing to develop one of the most innovative tools that I've seen yet. If you'd like to get started with the LTB Companion multi-token wallet, head to letstalkbitcoin.com/wallet to get yours free today.
Eric Bruntmeyer is going to tell us about, give us some insights about how CFOs, specifically those involved with universities, and their relationship to cryptocurrencies. So please give it up for Eric.
How are y'all doing? I appreciate you waiting to the end just for me because I'm at the tail of the dog. I work at Dallas Baptist University. I'm the vice president for financial affairs. I'm also a lawyer and practiced law in my previous life. I saw the light and I repented of my sins. But one of the things I want to make sure that you are aware of is I've got a problem at the university. I have lots of problems, and one of the problems deals with money. Money is huge to me. I like money. I want it near me, close, and I don't like paying fees. Fees are horrible. Fees mean nothing to me. And so, as a result, my problem drove me to Bitcoin to start researching Bitcoin with 3 of my student workers, Max, Matt, and Caleb, and they did a great job. I'm going to take you through about 10,000 years of history of payment systems real quick because I want you to get the frame of mind of what I'm thinking of at the university level. What's going on in our minds and CFOs' minds as we try to do something about our fees that we're paying. First, we start out with bartering. By the way, bartering doesn't work well with eggs and computers. However, for a long time, and I hope there we go, we start off with livestock. That's not going to work for me either. However, in previous years, 1898, we actually took ham and rice and we took beans in payment of some university accounts for students. That's just the way it was. So it's not so far gone that we've been using a barter system. We've used grain, precious metals, and you could see how the years advance quickly in the changes of currency and payment systems. But now we're at a point where we've gone from gold in a couple of years here, dollars that are backed by gold, to charge cards. Who remembers those? My parents had them. I didn't have them. I'm too young. But credit cards were huge and still are huge, and no one questions a credit card payment. I just receive it, I pay it, and I'm done. I don't ask who it's going to and how it's protected, and am I going to get my money? I know I'm going to get my money because in my mind, the true value in any of these payment systems is trust. Our whole economy is built on trust. Nothing exists without trust. I drive down the road, I trust you're going to stay in your lane, and I trust that the dollar bill is going to be worth something. And I think that's one of the keys for Bitcoin. Can I trust Bitcoin? So we get down to the US dollar, we get to e-commerce, we're receiving payments online, and then I get to my problem, which is I pay about $460,000 worth of fees in merchant services. That's a lot of money. We could use it for something else. And if there was a better way to do it, then guess what? I'm switching as quickly as I can, if I can trust the system. So I devised a survey. I thought I'm going to send a survey out to various CFOs throughout the private schools, and I wanted private schools specifically. And I asked them this question. Please choose from one of the concerns and issues below and identify the strength of your concern to the usage of Bitcoin specific. We came back with results. Some were greatly concerned, some concerned, some not concerned. You can see the red and the yellow. I'll read you the red ones. Risk of loss of value of a Bitcoin. You can see on the green, on that bar chart, we had about 17 responses in total, which is not a huge sample size, but I think their writings and their comments will give you an insight to what we're thinking. But if you look at it, one of the things that they really, really were concerned about was no government regulation of transactions. Will that problem ever be solved for a CFO? No, because there's not going to be any government regulations of transactions, hopefully. How about the risk of loss of value of the Bitcoin? Greatly concerned. Am I going to lose value? I need to keep value. By the way, this is going to give you the insight into the CFO's mind. We are conservative. We are risk averse. We want the money to stay here. We don't want it to lose in value. We're not out there investing in hedge funds and things that might come up and down. But we need the money tomorrow because we got to pay bills tomorrow. You can take a look at the last one, trust in the transaction. And I put that in a very vague way because I wanted to see how they would react to trust in transaction. And really it encompasses everything. They really don't trust the transaction. Last one, fluctuation of value of Bitcoin. They're pretty concerned about that. Now, I give them the survey. I ask them to take it. It's just 3 questions, a very small survey. And then I thought, you know what, before I let them go away, I need to educate them. So I had them actually, by the way, I'm going to give you the comments and then I'll tell you what I did next. Here's what they said. Bitcoins aren't money. Well, in my research, Bitcoins are currency. They're kind of a commodity. They're an investment. They're a payment system. They're everything. It fits a lot of needs out there. But their view is Bitcoins aren't money. I can't touch, feel, whatever. But then again, you can't do it with a credit card transaction. Look at this one. This is another response. I currently do not know enough about it from a redemption perspective that if someone offered to pay with Bitcoin, I'm not sure how I would convert it to cash. What do they want to do? Get rid of it. So if somebody's going to give it to me, I want to get rid of it as fast as I can. Again, risk averse. They need trust, and they don't have trust. So as soon as they get it, they want to get rid of it, and they don't know where to get rid of it to. How about this one? I'm intrigued by the cost-saving aspect since there are no transaction fees. And to me, that is a signal to the system, the Bitcoin system. Find places like this to leverage. I can take away your fees. I can minimize your fees. And I can keep your trust in the transaction and the value. And so how do you do that? Well, that's what we're here for. This is the other one, lack of government oversight. I saw this multiple times. They want government oversight. Why? Because they seem to trust the government more than they trust Bitcoin. That's a good thing, I think, for now. One exchange went bankrupt and lost all their coins due to a hack. I need to see some more security. So one bad thing happened, and now I'll always reject Bitcoin because that's all I know Bitcoin as. And these are educated people. These are people that understand money, have been in it for a long time. They're just not newbies. It's not been on my radar since this survey. I don't even know what it is. So, by the way, this is another signal for the system. We don't accept payments in foreign currency or have operations overseas where exchange rates are a concern in financial reporting. But this is a key. In my school, we have international students. We got quite a few international students, and they make international payments. Guess what they don't make it in? Their currency. They have to exchange theirs into my currency, and then they can make a payment. They've tried to pay with dinar, Iraqi dinar. That's fine. I can't take it. I don't know where to exchange it. However, I do have students that come over and they're paying wire fees, they're paying fees, crazy fees, just to get to school. And I think this is one of the signals that the system is giving us. Look at the international student payment system. I mean, if I take a Bitcoin and it was fake Bitcoin, can I sue? A lawyer loves to hear that kind of stuff. Who can I sue? Who's going to follow the money? But there's nobody to sue. So who can I trust? So I said, we're an educational system. We're all CFOs in educational institutions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have you watch a video. I want you to get educated on Bitcoin. So in the midst of the survey, halfway through, press the button, watch the video for 5 minutes. I thought that would help. And I asked the same question. And I came back with almost exact results. 5 minutes of education I thought would do a little bit more. But what I found is now more are interested in the Bitcoin, who accepts Bitcoin for payment and who will convert it. So again, signaling the system. I may have a problem with Bitcoin, but maybe if I accept it, can I get rid of it fast? That's now what I want to know. And here's the last part of that survey, so you can see it. You can compare it before, but then you can see it here. Let me show you what their responses are now. After the video, after the education, they ask, where are they kept? Where is anything kept? Did you have a big bag of money that you kept underneath your desk? Where was that kept? Well, after the video, I don't think, let's see, this video said a lot about mining, which I don't think should be a large part of the conversation at this point because mining is so complicated that few people do it. Okay, here's the deal. I probably picked the wrong video because it talked about mining. But in reality, if you're going to sell to somebody like a CFO, don't tell us about the process. In fact, hide the process way behind them, somewhere in the back. Solve the problem we have right now and get me to trust you can solve this problem. I don't care about the process. I didn't figure out merchant services and how they flow down the different conduits and how everybody gets a little big piece of the total. No, I didn't figure that one out either. I just want to know that the money's going to be there tomorrow because I want to know where it's kept. There's another one. It did not change. The video did not change it. It did not clarify how Bitcoins turn into dollars. Again, it's that mindset, I got to stay in the dollar world. I got to get back to the dollar world. This is a world I can trust. So, if I could trust you could switch it back into a dollar and back and forth and back and forth, what do you care? There's always been currencies that are side currencies, they're alternative currencies. They can go side by side for a long time, and they did in history. We had currencies go alongside each other until one was trusted and one fell out of trust. Here's another one. It would be important to find out who is at the top of the food chain. Does anybody know who's at the top of the food chain here? Okay, there you go. We got two suggestions. I'm sure they're all ducking their heads, but it's not true. Nobody's at the top of the food chain. You're at the top of the food chain. It's democratic money, right? You're at the top of the food chain and you're at the bottom of the food chain. Did you change your opinion a little, if anything? My trust in the system is I educated them in the wrong direction. So now they trust the system even less. So maybe education isn't the key. And that's kind of what I'm trying to point out here. So I thought, I'm not getting anywhere. It's not going the direction I want to do. So what do you do with statistics that don't work for you? You throw them away and go find something else. Because you don't want anybody disagreeing with you. And what I did is I went to the one school that I knew of in the United States that actually accepts Bitcoin. Duh, why didn't I go there first? So Frank Torino, who's the Vice President of Financial Affairs and Business at King's College like me, I sent him an email. I expect to get nothing from him. He's busy. What does he care? Some guy in Texas asking about Bitcoin? So I sent him an email. He responds, and guess what he says? We don't have a problem with it. And I said, you mean like your board, they were okay with you accepting Bitcoin? And how did you do that? How did you convince them? And he said, what do I care? I get the Bitcoin, I go to CoinCo, I exchange them, I switch it into dollars, and I'm done. And he has complete trust in the system because you solved a problem for him. Get it into dollars and get done, we're out. Now, the next step would be to maybe keep it a little bit longer. But he's treating it the way every accounting person treats an asset. Especially if you're given in payment or if you're given something as a gift or donation, land. Do I keep all the land that's given to the university? What do? I sell it off and I put it in dollars. What about the shares of stock that they give me? You sell it off and you put it back in dollars. That's what everybody does. And what he was saying was, just do what you normally do. Sell it off and get it back into dollars. So then there's another signal to the system. The exchanges between dollars and Bitcoin are going to be huge. That, to me, is where the solution and the trust can be built up. Now, I got a problem now. So, Max and Matt and Caleb, we're all in the Bitcoin frame of mind trying to figure out how can we do this thing. And I say, okay, how about you stop and try to buy some Bitcoin? Let's buy some. So Max and Matt and Caleb, they figure out a place in Dallas that sells Bitcoin, and they go to a Bitcoin ATM, and Max puts in his $15, Max? 15. He gets nothing. It gives an error message on the screen, and it took his money. So Max comes back to me and tells me that. I'm like, okay, I got to give you $20. That's not good. That's not good. He's like, no, I learned. But again, I don't even think ATMs for Bitcoin, I don't know if that's a really great idea. Because there's I tried to get an ATM on our campus. It's so costly to have an ATM on campus. The transaction, the fees that you may get off of that, you got to generate tons of traffic. It just doesn't work. So my suggestion is that's not the way to go. But I will tell you, one of the ways that we're starting to solve a problem separate and apart from Bitcoin is peer transfer. We have international payments that have got to come in and wires that I talked about before, and I really would like to have Bitcoin as my solution. But I've got to have some exchanges. I've got to have something out there that I can get it back into dollars because my board is going to expect me to do that and not hold on to it and watch the fluctuation of value going up and down and say, what are you doing? They want it back in dollars. But we've already solved, or many schools, universities have solved that international payment solution through peer transfer. And my suggestion is maybe, just maybe, Bitcoin needs to focus on universities with high international populations and come along and say, let us be your peer transfer alternative. Let's work with you and let's give you a place where you can actually sell quickly. And let's limit the amount that your international students actually have to pay in those merchant services, as opposed to the $460,000 in merchant services fees on a credit card or even more in wires. Why don't we just go ahead and set up a system that comes right alongside peer transfer? Try us once in a while. Okay, here's our beautiful campus, and I have a window that's very close to that. It looks west. I love looking west because when you look west, you see all the storms coming. And you know when the weather's changing, and you can make changes. And honestly, Bitcoin is going to help solve us some problems, I think. It's going to help the universities in the long run. So it's good to look out in the forecast and say, oh, things are going to change. They just moved my office, by the way. Guess what? I look east now. So it kind of ruins my story here. But this guy has given me a lot of direction. It comes from a TED Talks. Clifford Stoll, anybody know Clifford Stoll? He gave a TED Talks a long time ago, and he was saying, I'm not going to talk about astrophysicists. I'm not going to talk about the KGB. I mean, the man is bright, and he's crazy. He reminds me of the guy from Back to the Future, the scientist, who went around with the crazy hair and the 1.2 million gigawatts, whatever. Clifford Stoll is incredibly bright because he said one thing that inspired me to encourage you to do something. He said, don't ask me about the future. Why would you ask an old guy about the future? Go to a kindergarten teacher and ask the kindergarten teacher what the kids are doing in front of her on a daily basis, because in 20 years, the future shows up in them. So, to do a survey of CFOs, I've learned my lesson. It's a waste of time. The more you educate them, the worse it gets. Even to ask somebody who's doing it at the time was a huge help, Frank Torino. Get somebody who's been there. But even more importantly for me in the future, I've got 5 kids, 4 girls and a boy. I really need to sit down and talk to them and say, what do you think about money? And you like getting paid? You like to hold it or what? I think talking to the children, maybe even paying children, getting children to get used to a different currency, I think that's the only way you're going to see that really come through the system. Does that make sense? And so it's really the kids that solve the problem for us in the future, whether or not a currency like that will actually be absorbed and be used alongside the dollar. So I don't have anything else. If you have any questions, I'd love to talk to you afterwards. I know I'm getting tight on time, so all right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Bitcoin. Content for today's episode was provided by Chris, Danny, Eric, Helena, Guillermo, Pablo, Rob, and Jose. The magic word for episode 214 is show. That's SHOW. Show. You've got until the 26th of May to visit letstalkbitcoin.com or the Let's Talk Bitcoin iOS app to enter it for your share of the listener rewards. Music for this episode was provided by Jared Rubens and General Fuzz. This episode was lightly edited by Adam B. Levine. Any questions or comments? Email Adam at letstalkbitcoin.com. See you next time.